The Three Stooges, Laughter Through Tears. In the unforgiving spotlight of early American entertainment, few stories capture the heartbreaking resilience of performers like the saga of the Three Stooges, men who turned personal tragedy into public comedy, creating laughter that would echo across generations while privately enduring loss after devastating loss. The story begins in the gritty vaudeville circuits of the 1920s, where a temperamental comedian named Ted Healy assembled what would eventually evolve into one of comedy's most iconic trios. The haunting melancholy of Ted Healy's story lies in its cruel irony. The architect of the Three Stooges concept never lived to witness the immortality of his creation, instead dying young and alone while the men he had hired as his stooges were just beginning their rise to comedy immortality. Born Charles Ernest Lee Nash on October 1st, 1896, in Kaufman, Texas, Ted Healy was a natural showman who found his way to vaudeville in his teens. Quick-witted and versatile, he developed an act as a comedian and master of ceremonies. The genesis of what would become the Three Stooges came when Healy hired his childhood friend, Moses Horwitz, better known as Mo Howard, as a stooge, a plant in the audience who would heckle Healy, then come on stage to be berated. The concept was simple but effective. Healy would attempt to perform while his stooges interrupted with chaos, leading to Healy's exasperated abuse. Mo's older brother, Shemp, soon joined the act, followed by Louis Feinberg, a violin-playing boxer who would transform into the frizzy-haired middle stooge, Larry Fine. This early incarnation, Ted Healy and his Stooges, achieved significant success in vaudeville and made their first film appearance in Soup to Nuts, 1930. Ted was a brilliant comic, Mo Howard later acknowledged. He had tremendous stage presence and timing, but he was his own worst enemy. By 1932, Shemp Howard had endured enough of Healy's reportedly volatile behavior, both on and off stage. In a decision that altered comedy history, Shemp departed the act. Mo recruited his younger brother Jerome, who would shave his head and transform himself into the most beloved stooge of all, Curly. The relationship between Healy and his Stooges was contentious and eventually ruptured in 1934 when the Stooges signed with Columbia Pictures. Healy, known for his drinking and volatile behavior, had reportedly become increasingly difficult to work with. After the split, Healy continued a successful solo career, appearing in over 50 films for MGM and other studios. He was known for his sharp wit and could perform dramatic roles like in the movie Operator 13, 1934, a Civil War drama where Healy had a supporting role, showing his range beyond comedy. In 1935, he appeared alongside Peter Lorre in the psychological horror Mad Love, where Healy provided comic relief. San Francisco, 1936, a major hit starring Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy, where Healy played a bartender, blending humor with dramatic moments. Healy's final film role was in Hollywood Hotel, 1937, a musical comedy released after his death. He played a fictionalized version of himself. His presence added authenticity to the movie's showbiz satire, even if his health was reportedly declining during production. 3 years after the Stooges left him, on December 21st, 1937, Ted Healy died at age 41. He had been celebrating the birth of his son at the Trocadero nightclub in Hollywood. The official cause was listed as toxic nephritis resulting from alcoholism, but persistent rumors suggested he had been beaten in a brawl. Whatever happened that night, Ted didn't deserve it, Larry Fine later said. For all his faults, he gave us our start. Without Ted, there would have been no Three Stooges. Following his death, Healy was interred at Calvary Cemetery in East Los Angeles, California, alongside his mother and sister. His gravesite is located in Section F, Lot 1693, Grave 14. The funeral service was attended by numerous friends and colleagues from the entertainment industry. The Three Stooges had mixed reactions to Healy's death. Their split from Healy had been final, and by the time of his passing, the Stooges were already filming with Columbia and becoming a comedic institution in their own right. This lineup of Mo, Larry, and Curly would create over 90 short films. Under Columbia, the Stooges perfected their distinctive brand of physical comedy. Moe became the irritable leader, Larry the middle mediator, and Curly the childlike genius. These shorts weren't just funny, they were brilliant physical performances. The Three Stooges' slapstick routines, including eye pokes, face slaps, and head bonks, were carefully choreographed and rehearsed to ensure comedic timing and prevent injury. Their physical comedy required precision and practice, highlighting their professionalism and dedication. Their timing was impeccable, their chemistry undeniable. Even as World War II cast a shadow over America, the Stooges provided desperately needed laughter. Their shorts often contained subtle satirical jabs at Hitler and Mussolini, with the dictators receiving the same physical comeuppance as any Stooge antagonist. But even as they pummeled world leaders with comedic glee, real life was landing its own blows. Behind the camera, the relentless pace was starting to take its toll, especially on Curly. Born Jerome Lester Horwitz on October 22, 1903, in Brooklyn, New York, Babe, as he was known to family. The youngest of the Horwitz children, including older brothers Moe and Shemp. Shy and withdrawn as a child, Jerome lived in the shadow of his more outgoing older brothers Moe and Shemp. Ironically, the man who would become famous for his shaved head originally had thick, wavy chestnut hair and was considered the most handsome of the Howard brothers. As a young man, he worked a series of odd jobs, including as a singing waiter, occasionally performing with his brothers, but never showing the same dedication to show business. The pivotal transformation came in 1932, when Shemp Howard left Ted Healy's act. Moe convinced Jerome to join the act as a replacement, but with a dramatic makeover. Jerome shaved his head, adopted the name Curly, and created the character that would make him immortal. Curly reportedly said he almost cried the first time he saw himself bald. The character of Curly emerged almost immediately, the high-pitched voice, the bizarre sound effects, the surprisingly graceful movements. What seemed like random silliness was actually carefully crafted performance art. Directors who worked with Curly, like Edward Burns and Jules White, consistently praised his improvisational brilliance. They often let the camera roll just to see what he would come up with, knowing he'd fill any gap with spontaneous, unforgettable comedy. Curly's catchphrases,
"I'm trying to think, but nothing happens." "Certainly,"
became part of the American lexicon. His ability to transform everyday objects into comedic gold was unmatched. A simple encounter with a flight of stairs, or an attempt to fix plumbing, would become a ballet of controlled chaos. Off-screen, however, Curly's life was complicated. He was married 4 times and earned a reputation for extravagant spending and hard living. Off-screen, friends described him as painfully shy, often turning to alcohol to ease his discomfort at social events. His mother, Jenny, was a constant presence in his life and a powerful force behind many of his decisions, especially in matters of the heart. Their bond ran deep. Curly leaned on her for emotional support. But that closeness also cast a long shadow over his relationships with women. His love life was as chaotic as the characters he played: 4 marriages, 2 daughters, and a string of heartbreaks that mirrored the turmoil behind the laughs. His first marriage to Julia Rosenthal in 1930 barely made it 5 months. It ended before he ever found fame with the Three Stooges.
"Something hit me in the head. Is there a bullet hole there?" "No bullets going through that skull."
And some say the real star of that breakup was his mother's disapproval. In 1937, on the 12th anniversary of his brother Moe's wedding, Curly married Elaine Ackerman. It seemed more stable at first. They had a daughter, Marilyn, in 1938. But by 1940, the marriage had unraveled. Not long after, Curly's health started to spiral. He gained weight rapidly, began showing signs of hypertension, and the high-energy act that made him famous began taking a visible toll. His third marriage to Marion Buxbaum was even shorter and far more disastrous. 9 months of public fighting, press scandals, and emotional fallout that left Curly shattered. It was the kind of tabloid mess that no slapstick routine could fix. The breaking point came on May 6, 1946, during filming of Half-Wit's Holiday. Curly suffered a massive stroke on set. Though he survived, His career as a stooge was effectively over at age 42. The remaining years of Curly's life were heartbreaking. Partially paralyzed and unable to speak clearly, he moved from hospitals to nursing homes while suffering additional strokes. He made just one brief, wordless appearance in a later Stooges film, Hold That Lion, 1947. Moe, not just Curly's boss, but his protective older brother, was shattered. Moe visited him regularly, often breaking down in tears after leaving. The show, however, had to go on. In a touching display of family loyalty, Shemp Howard, who had built a successful solo career, reluctantly returned to replace his ailing brother in 1946. On January 18, 1952, Curly Howard died at age 48. He was buried at Home of Peace Memorial Park in East Los Angeles, California. His plot is located in the Western Jewish Institute section, Row 5, Grave 1. Curly Howard's headstone bears his Hebrew name, Yehuda Lieb, son of Shlomo. Nathan the Levite, inscribed above the English words, beloved husband, father, and brother. Shemp stepped into enormous shoes, but brought his own distinctive style to the trio. Born Samuel Horwitz on March 11, 1895, in Brooklyn, New York, Shemp was the third of the 5 Horwitz brothers and the oldest of the 3 who would become Stooges. From childhood, he displayed a remarkable aptitude for mimicry and physical comedy. Unlike his brother Moe, who cultivated a deliberate look with his bowl cut, Shemp's comedy stemmed from his naturally anxious demeanor and distinctive appearance. His nervous mannerisms, wild hair, and bug-eyed expressions were entirely his own. In reality, Shemp's self-deprecating humor masked a sophisticated comedic mind. He began performing in vaudeville as a teenager, often partnering with Moe. Before stepping back into the Stooge spotlight, Shemp Howard was already a familiar face on the big screen. Between the early 1930s and mid-1940s, he built an impressive solo career that proved he was more than just Curly's stand-in. He appeared in over 100 films, often as the twitchy, nervous sidekick or the comic relief, whose expressions did as much talking as the dialogue. One of his most memorable early roles was in The Bank Dick, 1940, with W.C. Fields, where Shemp played a bartender named Joe. The chemistry between his spastic body language and Fields' slow-burn sarcasm was electric. Audiences loved the contrast. At Vitaphone Studios, Shemp starred in his own 2 reel comedies in the 1930s, often playing lovable losers or fast-talking goofballs caught in everyday absurdities. Titles like A Peach of a Pear, 1934, The Knife of the Party, 1934, and Smoked Hams, 1934, gave him room to riff and improvise, showcasing his chaotic energy and timing without being overshadowed by a comedy partner. He was also featured in Abbott and Costello's Buck Privates, 1941, though minor, and in the horror comedy crossover The Invisible Woman, 1940, where he played a lab assistant. These parts weren't always top billing, but Shemp's twitchy antics and expressive face consistently stole scenes. One of his most acclaimed roles came in the Joe Palooka boxing comedies, like Joe Palooka in The Knockout, 1947, where Shemp played Nobby Walsh, the fast-talking, scheming fight manager. It was one of the few recurring roles of his solo career, and he made it count. By the time he rejoined Moe and Larry in 1946, Shemp wasn't just filling in. He was walking in with a resume that proved he could hold his own. He brought a different flavor, less innocent than Curly, more streetwise, a little neurotic, but just as unpredictable. And while his laugh became his calling card, it was that blend of nervous energy and offbeat timing that truly made Shemp stand out. Off-screen, he was known for his love of boxing, horse racing, and his extensive collection of sports memorabilia. Unlike the other Stooges, he maintained a relatively stable home life, remaining married to Gertrude Frank from 1925 until 1955. Shemp didn't want to come back. He'd established himself as a solo comedian, but Moe was his brother, and the Stooges were family. He couldn't say no. Shemp's return to the Stooges in 1947 was met with mixed reactions from fans devoted to Curly, but he eventually won them over. "I'm not trying to be Curly," Shemp insisted in a rare interview. "I couldn't be Curly if I tried. I'm just trying to be Shemp." He appeared in 77 shorts during his second stint with the Stooges. Brideless Groom, 1947, is often considered one of the best films of his time with the group. In it, Shemp plays a character who is tricked into a fake marriage in order to inherit money, leading to classic Stooges-style chaos. A Snitch in Time, 1947, is another standout from the era. The plot involves the Stooges in a ridiculous and hilarious situation where they try to save a woman from a gang of criminals. His frantic energy is on full display here, making it a standout performance of his. On November 22, 1955, Shemp attended a boxing match with friends. Riding home in a taxi, he lit a cigar, told a joke, then suddenly slumped over from a massive heart attack. He was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. He was 60. He was cremated and his ashes were interred within the Home of Peace Memorial Park in East Los Angeles, California, specifically in the mausoleum located in the Corridor of Eternal Life, Crypt 215W. His loss devastated the remaining Stooges, who still had 4 shorts left on their Columbia contract when Shemp died. Once these were completed, Columbia insisted on continuing the Three Stooges as a trio, rather than Moe and Larry performing as a duo. The studio required the new member to be someone already under contract, leading to the selection of Joe Besser, who had been starring in his own short-subject comedies for Columbia since 1949. The quiet heroism of Joe Besser's brief tenure with the Stooges reveals a man who dared to be different, bringing his own distinctive style to an established act, while navigating the bittersweet reality of joining comedic legends who were mourning one of their own. Born on August 12, 1907, in St. Louis, Missouri, Joseph Besser grew up in a working-class family where his natural comedic timing was evident from childhood. Unlike the rough-and-tumble Howard brothers, Besser developed a distinctive effeminate comic persona that set him apart in the male-dominated comedy world of the 1930s and 40s. He carved out his own oddball corner in American comedy well before joining the Stooges. His start in showbiz was almost accidental. At age 12, he assisted magician Howard Thurston, and a botched trick turned into an unintentional comedy bit. That happy accident launched a career full of manic energy and bratty charm. By the 30s and 40s, Besser was a staple in vaudeville, burlesque, and radio. His catchphrases were instantly recognizable.
I'll call him up. We'll make...
Out of my way!
I'll call him up and we'll make sure the job is... Because
I gotta have some more water!
All I get from you is excuses, and I won't stand for it.
Out of my way!
Hold on, take your water and go.
What's the matter with the kid there?
I don't care. You get a job and get
I
me
gotta have
out.
some more water!
What's the matter with
we
it?
don't care about...
Will you get out of my way?
Wait a minute, Stinky, come here.
What's the matter? Are you thirsty? I'm not thirsty! My room is on fire!
He earned national attention as Stinky, the overgrown man-child on the Abbott and Costello show, and even appeared alongside Shemp Howard in the film Africa Screams, 1949. Joining the Stooges was not an easy decision for Besser. He was 49 years old and had never performed the kind of punishing physical comedy that was the group's trademark. His contract specifically prohibited the violent slapstick that had been directed at Curly and Shemp. No eye pokes, no slaps, no significant physical abuse. This limitation changed the dynamic of the Stooges significantly. Moe's character became less violent, and the shorts took on a different tone. Besser would respond to Moe's threats with, "Not so hard," or "You're hurting me," creating a dynamic unlike previous Stooge iterations. Besser appeared in 16 shorts with the Stooges from 1956 to 1958. These films are generally considered among the weakest in the Stooges catalog, but the fault lies less with Besser than with declining budgets, recycled scripts, and the undeniable sense that an era was ending. During his Stooge tenure, Besser faced a personal challenge that would ultimately end his time with the group. His wife Ernie suffered a heart attack, and Besser, deeply devoted to her, was reluctant to travel for the personal appearances that became necessary after Columbia canceled the Stooges' contract. The Besser era yielded 16 shorts before Columbia Pictures pulled the plug on its short subjects division in 1957. Besser parted ways with the Stooges amicably in 1958, returning to a successful career in television. He became a regular on The Joey Bishop Show. He found his greatest success with Hanna-Barbera, with voices like Scare Bear Babu and Genie, and as Pootypuss in The Houndcats, 1972. After 24 years and a staggering 190 shorts, the curtain came down on the Stooges' film career. For a while, it looked like the final bow for the aging trio.
Worst break I ever had. They all owed me money.
Quiet, porcupine. Here's 10, I'll owe you 10.
You owe me 20. Here's 10, I owe you 10. Here's the 10 I owe you.
Here's the 10 I owe you.
Here's the 10 I owe you. Good, now we're all even.
A quiet end to a slapstick dynasty. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Columbia Pictures made the decision to release the Stooges' short films to television. This move was a game changer, as it introduced the beloved trio to a whole new generation of viewers, particularly children. They fell in love with these manic slapstick comedians. Sensing a golden opportunity, the team reinvented itself once more, this time for the big screen. To complete the trio, they brought in Joe DeRita, a rotund comedian who shaved his head to resemble Curly. Dubbed Curly Joe, he joined Moe and Larry in a new era of family-friendly feature films. Born Joseph Wardell on July 12, 1909, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, by the 1940s, he had established himself as a journeyman comedian, working steadily but never achieving stardom. Joe developed a solo act as a rotund, somewhat pompous character, appearing in a handful of Columbia shorts and feature films. Unlike the other Stooges, he came from a non-Jewish background, giving him a slightly different comedic sensibility. In 1958, when Joe Besser left the Stooges, Moe Howard began searching for a replacement. The Stooges' unexpected television popularity had created demand for live appearances and new material. After considering several candidates, Moe approached Joe. At 49, he was initially reluctant. "I had a good solo career going," he later recalled, but Moe was convincing. He said television had made them bigger than ever. The physical similarity to the beloved original Stooge helped audiences accept this new iteration of the trio. Curly Joe joined Moe and Larry for a series of full-length feature films aimed at their new audience, including Have Rocket Will Travel, 1959, Snow White and the Three Stooges, 1961, The Three Stooges Meet Hercules, 1962, The Three Stooges in Orbit, 1962, The Three Stooges Go Around the World in a Daze, 1963, and The Outlaws is Coming, 1965. These films, while commercially successful, were a far cry from the anarchic brilliance of the original shorts. The violence was toned down, the satire muted, and the plots often involved science fiction elements or fairy tales aimed at young viewers. In 1968, the Stooges were largely retired from film and television production, though they continued to discuss ideas for new material. Kook's Tour was intended to update the Stooges for a new generation and ease their transition into a more docu-comedy format. But the curtain came down hard in 1970. While filming Kook's Tour, the Stooges' final attempt to adapt to the television era, Larry Fine suffered a massive stroke. It left him partially paralyzed and brought an abrupt end to his nearly 5-decade run with the Stooges. Born Louis Feinberg on October 5, 1902, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Larry was the oldest of 4 children in a working-class Jewish family. His father, Joseph Feinberg, owned a jewelry store, while his mother, Fanny, stayed home with the children. As a young boy, Larry suffered a traumatic accident that would shape the course of his entire life. While playing in his father's jewelry shop, he reached for what he thought was a drink, only to grab a bottle of acid. His father swatted it from his hands, but not before the liquid splashed across Larry's left forearm, burning it badly. The injury was so severe that doctors feared it would permanently damage the muscles. In an effort to help him regain strength and mobility, his parents enrolled him in violin lessons. a bit of well-meaning therapy that accidentally launched one of comedy's most unlikely careers. Though Larry eventually became a skilled violinist, he reportedly hated practicing and found the rigid discipline of music frustrating. He may have mastered the instrument, but it was comedy that truly spoke to him. As he later joked, "I was making good money playing violin in the clubs, but I always got more laughs than applause. I figured maybe comedy was my real talent." Working in Philadelphia's music clubs as a teenager, while developing skills as a comedian and dancer, he adopted the stage name Larry Fine and began performing in vaudeville. In 1925, Larry married Mabel Haney, a fellow performer, and the couple had 2 children, a daughter named Phyllis, born in 1929, and a son named John, born in 1937. The defining moment of Larry's career came in 1925, when Ted Healy approached him after a show and offered him a spot in his vaudeville act alongside Moe and Shemp Howard. Larry's distinctive appearance, his bushy hair becoming frizzier as he aged, made him the perfect visual foil to the Howards. Unlike the Howard brothers, Larry had no familial connection to his fellow Stooges, yet he became the constant middleman through every iteration of the trio. From 1934 to 1970, Larry Fine was the only Stooge who never left the act, working alongside Moe with a succession of Third Stooges. On screen, Larry was often the mediator between the aggressive Moe and the childlike Curly, Shemp, Joe, or Curly Joe. In real life, his easygoing personality served much the same function. Moe Howard would later describe Larry as the easiest man to work with I've ever known. He'd do anything you suggested and never complained. Despite his affable nature, Larry struggled with personal demons. He developed a reputation for extravagant spending and gambling, often losing his earnings at racetracks. When the Stooges were at their height of fame, Larry and his family lived in hotels until the late 1940s. The 1950s saw the decline of the Stooges' film career as the film industry shifted toward more sophisticated comedy and different entertainment trends. They moved from making feature films to working primarily in television, with the popularity of short films fading. They worked mainly with Columbia Pictures, and many of their short subjects from this period were seen as less innovative compared to their earlier work. On November the 17th, 1961, while driving home from work, John Fine, Larry's son, lost control of his vehicle and crashed into a large tree just a few blocks from his home. He passed away several hours later from internal injuries. His untimely death at just 25 years old devastated his parents and his young widow, leaving a void in their lives. Tragedy struck again for Larry. When Mabel, his wife, suffered a sudden stroke, and he cared for her until her death on May 30th, 1967, the same year his own health would collapse. The man who had been a Stooge for over 40 years would never perform again. Larry spent his final years in a modest room at the Motion Picture and Television Country House, surrounded by the things that meant the most to him: Stooge memorabilia, stacks of fan mail, and the occasional photo of the good old days. Though the stroke had robbed him of mobility, it hadn't touched his mind or his spirit. In 1973, Larry Fine released his autobiography, A Stroke of Luck, as told to James Carone. The book offered fans a rare, first-hand look into Larry's life, from his childhood in Philadelphia to the glory days with the Stooges, and finally his years after the spotlight faded. Filled with over 100 black and white photographs, many previously unseen, it was a nostalgic walk through a life of laughs, struggle, and perseverance. Though the book was rough around the edges, with plenty of typos and factual slip-ups, it carried Larry's unmistakable charm and warmth. He shared personal memories and reflections with a candid honesty that made it feel like he was talking directly to the reader. Today, it's a collector's gem, especially in signed form. He remained sharp, talkative, and endlessly generous with his time. Larry loved chatting with visitors, often signing autographs or sharing behind-the-scenes stories with young fans and the staff who cared for him. Photos and video clips from those years show him beaming in his wheelchair, cracking jokes about his condition, and reminiscing about the wild ride that was his career. Despite the obvious physical struggles, his humor never dimmed. He even gave the occasional interview, on camera and off, always eager to connect with the public one more time. Friends and former colleagues, Mo Howard among them, as well as actor Emil Sitka, made regular visits. On January 24, 1975, at age 72, after suffering another stroke, Larry Fine passed away. His burial took place in Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. He is interred within the Freedom Mausoleum, Patriots Terrace, lower floor, Corridor of the Patriots, Sanctuary of Liberation. Left, a north side wall, single mausoleum crypt number 22,247. Bottom row, 4 columns in. Even as fans mourn the loss of the beloved Middle Stooge, the story of the Three Stooges wasn't quite finished. Mo Howard became the last living link to the original Three Stooges. Now, in his late 70s, Mo turned his focus to honoring their legacy. He continued giving interviews, meeting fans, and working on his autobiography, determined to tell their story in his own words before time could steal it. Born Moses Harry Horwitz on June 19, 1897, in Brooklyn, New York, Mo was the fourth of 5 brothers in a Lithuanian Jewish family. His childhood was marked by both a strong work ethic and an irrepressible desire to perform. As a boy, he would often cut school to attend theater shows, memorizing acts and practicing them at home. "I was supposed to be a scholar," Mo once reflected in an interview. "My mother wanted me to be a teacher of languages, but all I wanted was to be on the stage." Teased mercilessly by classmates for his odd haircut and long curls, young Moses took matters into his own hands, sneaking out to a shed and hacking it off himself. In the early 1910s, Mo performed in minstrel shows, a deeply problematic staple of American entertainment at the time. Like many aspiring performers, he did what he had to for stage time, even when the cost was dignity in hindsight. He later moved on to riverboat shows with his brother Shemp, honing the timing and banter that would one day become classic Stooge rhythm. It was a start, an uncomfortable one, but a start nonetheless. In 1925, Mo married Helen Schonberger, a cousin of Harry Houdini, beginning a marriage that would last just 1 month shy of 50 years. A remarkable contrast to the chaotic relationships portrayed in his films. The pivotal moment came when Mo and Shemp joined forces with Ted Healy in the 1920s. Mo, initially performing under the name Harry Howard, finally settled on Mo Howard as his stage name. As the leader of the Stooges, Mo was the driving force both on and off screen. He negotiated contracts, managed finances, and directed the group's creative vision. Unfortunately, this included accepting Columbia Pictures' notoriously stingy terms. Mo knew exactly what Columbia Pictures was doing. For over 2 decades, they strung the Stooges along with 1-year contracts, never offering raises, never mentioning how wildly profitable the shorts actually were. To Mo, it eventually became clear. They were the studio's cash cow, milked dry while being told they weren't ready for features. All the while, Columbia banked the laughs and the dollars as the Stooges stayed in the same cramped budget and behind-the-scenes grind. It wasn't about talent, it was about control. And Mo didn't realize just how much they had been shortchanged until long after they walked away. Despite his on-screen persona as an irritable tyrant, Mo was described by those who knew him as gentle, reserved, and intensely private. Mo's final years read like a slow fade from spotlight to legacy, all while life dealt him blow after blow. He witnessed his beloved brother Curly, once the group's comic dynamo, buckle under a series of strokes that left him barely recognizable, both physically and emotionally. Shemp, who'd stepped in when Curly couldn't, died suddenly of a heart attack in 1955, collapsing in a taxi with a cigar still clenched in his mouth. Then came Larry's stroke in 1970, which left him partially paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. But even as the original Stooges fell away one by one, Mo refused to let the legacy die. He kept performing with new lineups, first with Joe Besser, then with Curly Joe DeRita, and took the act on the road for stage shows, appearances, and even one final film, Kook's Tour. When a second stroke took Larry out of the picture for good, Moe leaned into his role as caretaker of the Stooges' history. He started giving interviews, showing up on talk shows, and writing what would become Moe Howard and the Three Stooges, an autobiography filled with stories he knew only he could tell. In 1974, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. By then, the world had rediscovered the Stooges through syndicated television, and Moe got to witness a new generation fall in love with the act he had built from the ground up. On May 4th, 1975, at age 77, just months after Larry Fine, Moe Howard passed away from lung cancer at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, California, where he had been admitted a week earlier. He was buried at Hillside Memorial Park in Culver City, California. His plot is located in the Garden of Memories, Alcove of Love, Wall C, Crypt 233. His daughter Joan Howard Moorer would later write, "My father was always the stooge who walked away relatively unscathed. In real life, though, he carried the weight of the trio on his shoulders, suffering every loss as if it were his own personal failure." But the story of the Three Stooges didn't end there. Attempts were made to revive the brand. Joe DeRita and Emil Sitka briefly looked to form the new Three Stooges. But with Moe gone, the chemistry was impossible to replicate. Still, the remaining Stooges did what they could to keep the slapstick spirit alive. Joe Besser published his autobiography, Not Just a Stooge, in 1984, providing fans with insights into his long career in comedy. Health issues began to affect Besser in his later years. He suffered from heart problems that gradually restricted his activities, though he continued making occasional appearances and giving interviews about his storied career. On March 1st, 1988, at the age of 80, Joe Besser died of heart failure at St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California. Following a private funeral service attended by family and close friends from the entertainment industry, Besser was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, in the Garden of Heritage. The latter part of DeRita's life was spent in retirement, occasionally appearing at fan conventions and special events celebrating the Stooges' legacy. He managed his finances prudently over the years, allowing him a comfortable retirement, a rarity for many performers of his era. He remained proud of his contribution to comedy history, while maintaining a humble perspective on his place in it. Health challenges began to mount in the late 1980s. DeRita suffered a series of strokes that left him requiring care at the Motion Picture and Television Country House and Hospital in Woodland Hills, California. It was there, on July 3, 1993, just days before his 84th birthday, that Joe DeRita passed away from pneumonia. He now rests at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood, California. His grave marker reads, Curly Joe DeRita, the Last Stooge. A fitting epitaph for a man whose patience and perseverance finally led him to his place in comedy history. In the tenderly bittersweet final chapter of the Three Stooges saga, DeRita embraced the thankless task of helping aging comedy legends find dignity in their twilight years. Perhaps that's the most fitting epitaph for these knights of knockabout comedy, the Three Stooges, men who turned personal tragedy into public comedy, creating laughter that would echo across generations while privately enduring loss after devastating loss. In the end, the Three Stooges weren't just a slapstick trio. They were a full-blown cultural phenomenon that refused to stay down, no matter how many times they got poked in the eyes. From vaudeville stages to silver screens to Saturday morning reruns, they delivered decades of laughs with eye-popping timing and unapologetic chaos. And behind all the pie fights and pratfalls were real men, flawed, determined, and funny as hell, who gave everything they had to the act. Even when the industry didn't give much back, they survived studio indifference, personal tragedies, and ever-changing lineups, yet somehow always came back swinging, and usually slapping. Moe, Larry, Curly, Shemp, Joe, and Curly Joe. Each left a mark, each carried the torch, even when the world moved on. And though the curtain finally closed with Joe DeRita's passing in 1993, the Stooges never really left. Their comedy, their rhythm, their sheer absurdity lives on in the chuckles of kids discovering them for the first time, and in the belly laughs of grown-ups who remember them like old friends. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying and listening. I hope you enjoyed.